cycles. Today I'm going to be going over the build of our 1986 Sportster, which we're turning into a Monoshock bobber. So, the reason why we decided to do it this way is we haven't really seen that many that were this style. We've seen a couple other that were close, but we wanted to kind of make it our own, do something a little funky, something you don't really see that much. So, the first part of the process is to tear the bike down. You'll see a picture of the bike right here, what it looked like before. And I have to say, if it's your style, I'm sorry, but that bike was awful. So, the first part of this process, when it comes to building a bike like this, is the tear down. So we tore all that stuff off and sell whatever you're not going to use. We decided to sell it so we can put some money back into the build. The next part that I did was that I cut all of the stuff off of the frame right here. Normally there's a hoop that comes back and then they tie in down here. And you'll see a picture of how I did these. I just bent these out of tubing that I had that matched the size of the frame. So the next process was the 5-inch stretch on the swing arm to give us the length to fit the shock and the oil tank inside of it. So when doing the 5-inch stretch, you have to go through a kind of not difficult process, but you have to get it right. So I have a surface plate, which I use. It's not a great one, but it's the one that I use for welding, so I don't care about it. And so the first thing I did was cut it off, get my slug material, make the slug material fit. Then I added my sections in and plug welded them and welded all the way around. And now when you're welding those on a swing arm, you have to be very careful because it will pull certain ways if you're not careful. So you have to kind of weld it in a certain sequence so then it pulls the way you want it to pull. So the next part of the process was to come up with this rear hoop here. To come up with this rear hoop, I got my measurements. I measured off of the swing arm up how far I wanted to be up, where I wanted the shock to be roughly. And so I went into a software called Bentech Pro, and I used that, and it ended up not working for this situation. So I just did it the old-fashioned way, making bends. So after I bent this up, this was longer. I gave myself a little bit of clearance so I can move it up and down. So I cut these off and tacked this into place. The next process that I did was fitting up the bar that's in here that runs across that these two supports mount to. These two supports are just bent the same way, and getting them correct and notching them, you'll need a couple of special tools for that. You don't necessarily need them, but I really like to have them. I used a centering head and a notcher. It makes it go much faster. And then also you have to make sure they're the same so it looks good. So I made that. And then we purchased the shock. It was off of a Honda Interceptor 600. And the reason why we purchased that shock, as opposed to using any Harley shock, is because of the overall length. It's the shortest one that we could find that could handle the weight. So it's 10.5 inches long, and it's perfect for what we needed to do. So the next thing that I did was I made these two mounts to mount the shock. Now, this mount up here is going to be getting changed. I sketched it up on Fusion 360, which you can see that right here. And so that's going to be our shock mount and our seat mount as well. It's going to be the basis for our seat mount. So we are going to run tubing off of that, bend it up into the shape of the seat, and then the seat's going to sit on it. And so the reason why that is we had an engineering friend of ours look at this design, and he said that it's not strong enough, so we revised the plates, and he said that that'll work. And that's a nice thing to have friends that are into this type of stuff, because they can help you out if you don't know any better, and it'll save you from breaking stuff. So the next thing that we do on this build is install the chain. That'll help you get your fender spacing correct, and that'll just help you with clearancing everything else. So this fender here is handmade out of 14 gauge aluminum. I made it on my English wheel, and then I welded the sides on and smoothed it to make it look good. This is the first fender that I've ever made, and I feel very proud of it. I'm sure there's some spots that aren't quite perfect, but I'd like to think that it's just as good as anything else that you could buy, if not better. So then the next thing we did is we made the oil tank. The oil tank is specifically designed this way because there's no other space for it. So it sits inside of the swing arm, and that's why it has the funny shape as you've seen in the pre-roll videos and in these pictures that I'll include with this video. And so that should give us sufficient supply as well as taking up the space that we need it to take up. And then the next part of this build is going to be making the battery box, which is going to sit up here, and that's going to be sitting right there for the battery. And then the tank is going to get mounted, and then that is pretty much the end of the fabrication process. While it's the end of the fabrication process, there's still quite a lot more that has to go on. It will have to go back to Jim's shop to have all the wiring laid out and get ready for that. It will have to be painted, powder coated, and then reassembled at Jim's shop. So we're quite a ways away from being done, but I just thought I'd show you something that's a little different, just to get you interested in the channel. Thanks for watching, have a great day, and subscribe.